In this video, I'm going to teach you how to change the design of a table in Word 2007. Or in other words, I'm going to show you how to make a table look pretty. So when you select a table in Word 2007, you'll get two Table Tools tabs on the ribbon, Design and Layout. And obviously for this one, we're looking at Design. Now the quickest way to change the format of your entire table is to use one of these available table styles. Click the drop-down arrow and you'll have lots and lots and lots of options of how you can make your table look. So for example, if I click this, huge difference. So automatically, big changes. So any one of these, you'll notice as I'm rolling over these, you can kind of get a little preview of it in the background. So I might select something like this and decide I quite like it. You can also customize the way your table looks, just if I select another one of these, using these little tick boxes. So header row refers to the first row of information in your table. Normally that's the row that describes what the rest of the information is, so the formatting's a little bit different. But if you don't want special formatting in that, you can untick this. So just to give you an example of how that works, say if I didn't have this information, I'll just delete that row. You notice how now I have the name of one person with the special formatting, and I definitely don't want that. So if I untick header row, no special formatting. Similarly, the first column is usually something special. It's a more important piece of information, so it has extra formatting, like in this case there's the bold. So if you untick first column, you won't have that formatting. I'm just going to undo some of this. The total row is when you have information at the bottom of the screen. Just undo one more. So usually that's if you've got sort of money information, financial information. If you tick that, you'll notice in this case I get a little double line. So it's just to show a subtotal. Last column, similar sort of thing. Totals at the bottom you might usually, or on the right, you might want to have that bold, so instead of your first column. And then you've got banded rows and banded columns. So this is more when you have sort of large tables of information and it's a little bit difficult to follow them all the way across the page. Banded columns, I'll just select one of these so you can see. So the columns is the information going down the page, the rows is the information going across. So sometimes banded rows can be quite a good idea just to give you that extra ability to follow information. Banded columns I tend not to use so much, but it's there if you want it. Okay, so we have those options there. Coming back over to table styles, we also have shading and borders. So if you decided, you've applied your default style and yeah, it's not too bad, but this is just a little bit too orange for you, you can select that entire row, and I'll talk about how you select these things quickly in another video. Click the shading drop down and you have all of these different colours that you can apply. So you'll notice there's lots and lots and lots of different options here. And if you ever get really desperate or you're using a corporate colour, click more colours. You can select something from a colour palette here, or if you click custom, you can actually type what's called an RGB value, which is for red, green, blue. Well, if you're using these, you probably know what they are, but you can do things like select a particular colour, and it will give you that. So that's usually if you're doing things to match sort of your corporate font colour. You know what I mean. Borders, similar sort of thing. You can choose how you want these lines to appear between each cell. So in this case, you notice I've got sort of these orange lines around the outside and then these dotted blue lines on the inside. The dotted blue ones are actually what we call grid lines. They're not going to appear when I actually print this document. Say if I went up and I'll just bring up my print preview button, print preview this document. I'll just zoom in. You notice you can see the orange lines but not the blue ones. Those are just visible on the document here so that it helps you sort of distinguish how large the columns are and the different information. And if I go back to the layout tab, somewhere there is a place where you can turn those off. Nope, can't remember where it is. Pretend I'd never said it. Okay, but you can select borders, different kinds of things. Oh, there it was, view grid lines. So that gives you an accurate representation of what your table is going to look like. I might just turn those back on because personally once you get used to them I find them quite useful. Just select that again. So other borders, you can put a border just in the bottom of a cell. You can put a border on the top of the cell, so you can see this is just affecting the cell I have selected. You can select the entire table and choose things like bottom borders will put the bottom of the entire table. And then you have things like all borders, which does all of the borders consistently for your entire table. I'm just going to undo that to show you something else. You have outside borders, which is just the outside, so just around those edges, but not these interior lines. And then inside borders is obviously the inside lines, but not the outside. You've also got these things called inside horizontal and inside vertical. So when you do bottom border, it just does the very bottom of the table. If you do inside horizontal, it does all of those lines, which is good to remember because sometimes you'll see people do this. They'll go, oh, I really want that line everywhere, so I'll select this one, and then I'll put in the bottom border there, and then I'll select here, and then I'll put in the bottom border there. You don't need to do that. Just select the whole table, choose the drop down, inside horizontal. Much easier. You've also got inside vertical, and you've also got diagonal. So if you wanted to sort of cross some cells out to say there's no information here and it's deliberate, choose one of these diagonals, which can be kind of funky. What else? Horizontal line. I tend not to use that so much in tables. That's sort of added a horizontal line in the cell. You do it sometimes when you're typing text just regularly in a document, inserting horizontal lines, but not so much within the tables themselves. And then you've also got draw table. I will do a whole separate video on that one, and borders and shading, which brings up a completely separate window where you can customize all of that again. So you can add your boxes, you can choose different colors for your border lines, different dotted lines, different thicknesses, all sorts of different information that you can apply. So if you really want to experiment and play around with some different ways of doing things, borders and shading is great fun. You can also do page borders in here. So if you ever wanted your entire page of your document to have a nice border, that's where you find it. And I'll show you that in another video sometime too. And you can also apply shading. So you might want some shading applied, not maybe to your entire table, you might just want it to the cell you're in, or to paragraphs of text you can actually do. And you can choose different colors to do that with as well. This style, usually you'd go solid. I don't know if you could see in the little preview, but when you do these lighter ones, you get kind of a dotted effect, which isn't so pretty. So you can kind of see it's gone all dotty without the text. So what you generally want to do, borders and shading, shading. I want to make that solid, and I want to make the color a pale color. That will look a little bit prettier. And if you ever get stuck and think, I've just made a terrible mess of that, just go back to selecting one of those default table styles to begin with. If you really don't like any of them, just go back up to plain table and you're finished.